guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. Before we go straight into today's case, I'd like to give you guys a couple of content warnings. In this video, we do talk about suicide and domestic abuse. I don't go into any details, but still, if that's not something you think you're interested in watching, then this video probably isn't for you. So maybe you can watch some of my other videos or just wait for my next upload. Andrea Venter was born in 1985 in Rustenburg. She was the only daughter to her parents, and she had an older brother, Kobus, who was born in 1973. Her parents tried to have another child after Kobus, and they really struggled. Her mother, Aniki, had had 2 miscarriages before they decided to go the vitro fertilization route, and it worked. They got pregnant with Andrea, and she was said to be one of the first children in Rustenburg to be born using this method, and she's also known as the first test tube baby from Rustenburg. From an early age, Andrea was an extrovert. She loved spending time with her family and friends. She had a beautiful and infectious smile, and she was described by both her friends and family as someone who's hardworking, driven, and soft-hearted. She also loved playing sports. She would play netball, hockey, soccer. She was also a singer, and she could play the piano as well as the guitar. She was also a ballerina. She was literally just a jack of all trades. She was smart. She was talented, she was beautiful, hardworking, just everything. After high school, she got accepted to study at the University of Northwest, the Potchefstroom campus, and there she studied commerce and accounting. And again, she was just very dedicated to her studies, and she did extremely well. And eventually, she graduated with honors. After graduating, Andrea got a job in Rustenburg, and this is where she met a man, and his name is Gerrit Jansen van Vieren. Gerrit was 12 years older than Andrea, and he grew up in Koster in the Northwest as well. It's said that he excelled in school, and after school he pursued a career in IT. When he was just 2 years old, his parents got a divorce, and his mother would later say that Gerrit grew up in a home that was filled with gender-based violence. His father was extremely abusive towards his mother as well as to Gerrit and his siblings. His mother wanted to leave him for a very long time, and each time she tried to leave Gerrit's father, he would threaten to kill the children if she ever left or if she decided to leave with the children. Eventually though, she decided to leave him, and because he had threatened to kill the children if she took them with, she had to leave them behind. And because of this, Gerrit was raised by his abusive father. Because his father would physically abuse him so much, Gerrit would say the pain would become pleasure, and his outlet would be watching pornography. As a child, he was exposed to graphic pornography by his father, and by the age of 14, he was addicted. His father had tapes littering all over the house. So, you know, Gerrit was never short of watching something new or just watching various things from a very young age. Unfortunately, in 1994, Gerrit's older sister Yvonne took her own life when she was just 19 years old, and tragedy would struck the Van Vieren family again almost 2 decades later in 2011 when Gerrit's brother too took his own life. Gerrit had also tried to take his own life before, but he was unsuccessful, and it's also said that he was clinically depressed. As all of this was happening though, he still tried to make a name for himself, continue with his life, find love. He would be in different relationships, and he was said to be just very generous in those relationships. Some say kind-hearted. I don't think he was kind-hearted, but he was also described as someone who was very controlling, possessive, jealous, very dominant. You know, he was the type of person to hide his real personality until a certain time, and then his real self would come out. When Andrea first met Gerrit, she was very drawn to him, and he was also drawn to her, and because of this they started seeing each other, and soon the two of them got into a relationship. And Gerrit was very nice and just very kind to Andrea. She fell so in love with him, but he couldn't hide his controlling and possessive side for long, because soon Andrea started seeing those parts of him. First, he began to isolate Andrea from her family and friends, and they quickly took note of this, especially her parents, because she was so close to them. The times where they would be able to speak on the phone, they could just tell that she wasn't herself and something was extremely wrong. On one particular occasion, Andrea's father remembers witnessing one of Gerard's violent outbursts towards his daughter. He saw Gerard and Andrea and they were in a car and Gerard was just screaming at her. Suddenly, he opened the car door, pushed her out and threw a laptop at her. After this, her father went straight to the police station to try and open a case against him, but this didn't go anywhere. Andrea still really tried to make the relationship work. She did love Gerard, and at this point their fights hadn't been physical. There had been more like just verbal arguments and things like that, but all of that would change when on one night her and Gerard got into such a bad fight that he started strangling her to the point that she lost consciousness. And once she woke up, she knew that this relationship wasn't going to work and she had to leave, so she did just that. Gerard, though, didn't want the relationship to end. He didn't want to let go of Andrea, and because of this, he kept trying to see her again. He would follow her, like in simple terms, he was just stalking her. And every time Andrea's parents would speak to her, they could tell that she just wasn't herself. She wasn't her typical bubbly, happy self, and it was just because of Gerard and how he wouldn't leave her alone. She would also ask her parents for advice about what to do, and her parents kept telling her to just go the legal route. And once Gerard found out that she was taking advice from her parents, he went straight to them and started threatening them. After a while, Andrea did listen to her parents and she decided to take the legal route and filed for a protection order against Gerard, and this made him extremely angry and he didn't stop following her, stalking her. In fact, it made him even more angry, more possessive, and he just couldn't let her go. Because of this, Andrea would try by all means to just hide from him. She would change her schedule. She would try not to bump into him, when she'd go grocery shopping or just small things like this. But every single time, Gerard would always find her. Andrea knew that she had to get away from him, and that meant leaving Rustenburg. So when she finally got the protection order against him, she moved to Joburg, which is about an hour and a half from Rustenburg. Once she moved to Joburg, Gerard literally just couldn't find her anywhere. He would search all over Rustenburg and he just didn't know where she was. He even called her parents and threatened to kill them if he couldn't find her. He would also say things to them like, if I can't have her, then nobody else can. He even went as far as saying that he would hire people to murder Andrea's father and sexually assault her mother. Gerard knew that Andrea had probably left Rustenburg, but he didn't know where she went and didn't even know where to start looking. But this would all change when he was contacted by police about the protection order that Andrea had gotten against him, and they just spoke about things that he can't do, about how he can't be at her workplace, can't be in contact with her, can't go to places that she frequents. And as they were talking to him about this protection order, they mentioned Joburg, and at first he didn't understand why, but eventually he put two and two together and he realized that Andrea must have moved to Joburg, and because of this he knew where to start looking for her. So he went to Joburg, and Joburg is big. He didn't know where to start looking, but he knew information about Andrea. He knew what she had studied, where she had worked before, and he knew that she had probably gotten a new job in Joburg at an accounting firm. So because of this, he started calling all of the accounting firms in Joburg to try and find her. And I don't know how long it took him to find her, but eventually he called a number, and to his surprise, Andrea answered the phone. Apparently, when she answered the phone, he said to her, "Now I know where to find you." With this, he knew exactly where she worked, and he went to where she worked, and he would park like a distance away from her, and he just started followed her so that he could find out where she lived, would find out her routine, where the places that she would frequent, where she would shop, and she didn't know that he was following her. On Friday the 29th of April 2011, Gerard just had to see Andrea again. He just wanted to see her face, just speak to her. So he went to her apartment complex in Four Ways called Sibaya Sands, and somehow he managed to get past the security guardhouse. So when you see a picture of it, like, you can see the gate, and then in the middle, like, there's a gate where you enter, there's a gate where you exit, and in the middle there's the security guardhouse. So I don't know how he managed to get through that. Maybe he spoke to them nicely, he drove in with someone, I don't know, but somehow he managed to get in there, and he was waiting right by Andrea's apartment. And once she got home, she saw him, and we can only imagine how scared she was. And he forced her inside of her apartment, and this is where he held her captive for the entire weekend. And throughout this entire weekend, he would sexually and physically assault her. On the 2nd of May, Andrea managed to escape her apartment, and she ran straight towards the guardhouse where the security stays, which is about 150 meters away from her apartment. She started running and screaming for help. I think it was in the early morning, around 6 a.m. And she was just screaming. She was bloodied, she was bruised. She had Gerard's belt around her neck, and she literally got so close to the guardhouse, and then she tripped and fell. And right behind her was Gerard, and he was holding a knife. The security guard got out to see what was happening, and he saw her, and as he walked straight to Andrea to try and help her and just see what was happening, Gerard went to him and threatened him with a knife. And after this, the security guard ran back into his guardhouse, where he called for backup. At this point, people had heard Andrea's screams for help, and people got out of their apartments to see what was happening, and they were just onlookers watching everything that happened. And even though there was only one Gerard and probably 10 or 20 people watching what was happening, they felt like they couldn't intervene, and they watched as Gerard started beating her up with a knuckle buster that he had. And when this didn't work, he took the knife that he had and started stabbing Andrea. He stabbed her 14 times, and then he slit her throat ear to ear. After this, he took the knife and he tried to slit his own throat so that he could take his life. And then he laid next to Andrea and then decided that he wanted to take her belt, like the belt that was around her neck. He took that belt off, threw it into the flower beds that were nearby, and then he repositioned Andrea's body and just laid next to her, presumably just waiting for his life to end. At this point, all of the onlookers had called police, and police arrived on the scene, but they were too late. Andrea was gone. She was only 25 years old. The ambulance that was initially called for Andrea then took Gerard to the Life Health Care Hospital in Four Ways, where nurses and doctors worked tirelessly to try and save his life. Miraculously, he did survive, and 6 weeks later, he was out and he was charged with Andrea's murder. Despite all of the evidence they had, which included CCTV footage of the entire crime, literally CCTV footage that showed Andrea running from her apartment straight to the guardhouse when she fell, how Gerard took the knife and stabbed her, they had that footage. They had the protection order that she had filed against him. They had the police that arrested him on the scene. They had so many eyewitnesses. Despite all of this, they still kept kept postponing the trial. And this went on for about 19 months. There is a link where you can watch the CCTV footage of this crime happening. Obviously, there are parts that are blurred out, but I will link it down in the description box if you do want to go see it. Gerard then applied for bail, and Dr. Jared Labuskakny, who we've spoken about before, he's released 2 books called The Profiler Diaries, and I do have a series on that. I'll link it up here, I don't know where, if you want to watch that. But he took a stand against Gerard's bail application, and he stated it was clear that Gerard did not abide by the law. As he clearly violated the protection order, he would most likely violate his bail. But even though what he said was very compelling, the courts just didn't listen to him, and then on the 3rd of December 2012, Gerard was granted bail of 15,000 rand. Gerard roamed free for almost a year until eventually he got his trial date, which was set for the 3rd of May 2013, almost 2 years to the day after he took Andrea Venter's life. And as the trial was fast approaching, he just knew that he had to get away, and unsurprisingly, he disappeared with the help of both of his parents. The day before the trial, his father drove through the night, drove him all the way to Durban, where he went to King Shaka International Airport. He got on an Emirates flight and had a layover in Dubai, and then he ended up in Brazil. How he traveled with a fake passport that his own mother had gotten for him. So he had literally escaped. When they later asked Gerard's mother why she did it, she said, "I have no excuse, I'm just a mother, unfortunately." Afterwards, I felt very guilty about it. She says that this guilt led her to contact Dr. Gerard or Jared Labuskakny and told him about her son's whereabouts. And now that they had his fake name that he used and and where he flew to, which was Brazil, they started searching for him, and eventually they did find him in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And because of this, he was arrested and sentenced to 2 years for using a fake passport to enter Brazil, and this delayed his extradition back to South Africa. In 2015, so 2 years later, he was released, but the way he was released is very suspicious, and it's still like up in the air. No one really knows what happened, but it is said that apparently a judge went to the prison and told them that they had to release Gerard. And I think some people said no, they can't do that, because once he's released, he has to be extradited back to South Africa. There's a ton of paperwork, there's things that they have to do. But apparently the judge just said, listen, just release him. And they did. They just released him back to the streets of Brazil. And once they found out that Gerard had been released, they were so upset because he had been released, not extradited back. They didn't know what name he was using. They didn't know if he had gotten on another flight, if he had went to another country. They literally just didn't know anything. And once again, Gerard had evaded trial. It turned out that Gerard had started a new life. He had a wife who was from the Netherlands, and he had a 1-year-old daughter. He apparently told his wife that he was from the Netherlands, and she didn't know anything about his past and how he had murdered his ex-girlfriend. So what happened was, eventually, I think after 5 years, he decided to send his mom a message on Facebook to let her know about his new life, how he had a wife, how he had a child, just how excited he was about his life. And it was him sending this message to his mom and them being in contact that led police to discover his exact location. So with the help of Interpol, the SAP, and the Brazilian police, they all worked together to try and find him. And finally, on the 18th of June 2020, he was found in his living room with his child, and he was arrested and extradited back to South Africa to finally have his day in court. Then, before the trial could start, it was delayed again because of his own mother, who claimed that her son had some sort of mental instability, so they had to look into that. The lady who had gotten him a fake passport, had gotten his trial delayed more than once, is the same one who said in an interview that Gerard had never shown any remorse and claimed that Andrea deserved to die. She also said that he had threatened to take her own life, and when she was asked what she thinks his sentence should be, she said life. I personally believe it's because he threatened her life, and if he hadn't done that, then she probably would have said that, they make mistakes and he should be released and things like that, because she helped her son more than once to evade trial, to have his day in court. She was complicit in everything that he did. Finally, 11 years after Andrea Venter's life was tragically taken, On the 22nd of August 2022, so just last year, Gerard Janssen van Vieren was finally sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Andrea Venter. Andrea's mother, Anneke, would however never see her daughter's killer have his day in court, as she died in January 2016. Her husband says from heartache. And that's it for today's case. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps my channel out a lot, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.